Hi, happy Valentine's Day. This is Matt here with State of Flux to review the 2001 slasher film Valentine. And if this is a Be My Valentine invite, I politely reject it. This is an unfortunate, middling slasher at the tail end of the success of the Scream franchise revival of the slasher genre that kind of was probably one of the ones that cemented the fate of the slasher film of the early 2000s. The problem with the movie is that it feels very much that it was made in the wrong era. This feels very much like a spiritual successor to films such as Prom Night or Terror Train, where there is a young boy wronged in the past, in this case, sixth grade dance, I want to say it was, and how he was rejected by all these women in his life, and terrible tragedy, mental in this case, befalls the character. The story jumps forward 13 years later as everybody is at the adult end of their high school, college career. 13 years later, the story picks up, and for whatever reason, this boy, now grown up, is picking people off, or so we're meant to think. The climax of that is unclear, and I'll touch on that a little bit towards the end, but this came about when the resurgence of the slasher genre, because of Scream, really bounded back into theaters. And there was a slew of them that came out around the same time post-Scream, and none of them could really liven up to at least the very creative energy, certainly not, but some of them stacked up because they had strong performers in front of the screen. I would say that the cast of this movie is stronger than some of its contemporaries of the time. I think this movie stars Marley Shelton, who is fantastic in most things she is, and really one of the unsung Scream queens that doesn't get the recognition she probably should, because she really is fantastic. It stars her, it stars David Boreanaz, who is hot off his own TV show, not just as being part of the Buffy cast. Now he was part of the Angel cast, the star of the show. You had Katherine Heigl, you had Denise Richards. Some of these performers are really quite good, and some of them are even fine in this movie. This movie just lacks energy, and what makes it even more perplexing is the fact that this is a movie directed by the guy who did Urban Legend, and of all the Scream contemporary films of its time, I would say Urban Legend was the best Scream knockoff. I liked it better than I Know What You Did Last Summer. I liked it better than the revival of Halloween or Bride of Chucky or whatever. Urban Legend has a place in the horror genre as being one of the few good slashers of the 90s, and I think better than most of what came out in the 80s in terms of the slasher films. Largely because of the energy that film has, and the fact that it is able to deliver scares, and the kills in the film are complex in a fun way, much like Urban Legends often are. This film lacks the energy. The kills seem derivative and lifeless, pun intended, I guess. And it's just really lacking. Now, does that stem from a weak screenplay? I went down that rabbit hole too, and I decided to look up who wrote this movie. This film was written by the people who wrote Deep Blue Sea, which is one of the most vibrant, brimming with energy, shark movies. If you're going to watch a shark movie that isn't Jaws, you best be watching Deep Blue Sea, because that is the best of its type. This just is lacking in all respects, all the different elements to make the slasher work. It's not scary, it has no solid mood music, it doesn't have any interesting kills, or certainly not interesting characters. Oh boy, did this film not age well. You're trying to watch a slasher film through sort of a feminine lens, definitely not a feminist lens. And then lastly, like, it's just boring. It just doesn't have anything going on there. It feels derivative. It feels like this probably had a low-budge place in the 80s where it would have made a passable acceptance in the video rental market. But being as that this film kind of came out at the tapering end of that video market, as well as the tapering end of that slasher resurgence, this one just goes nowhere. And I feel is honestly one of the things that resulted in the end of this slasher resurgence. It has one solid, like the first 10 minutes are fine enough. Like I thought I was going to be at least engaged, but after the first kill I'm checked out, and the first kill is probably the most creative one or the most like suspenseful one. All the other ones are just like bland as can be. Denise Richards, spoiler alert, has a death scene that is fine, I guess. But it's only fine in comparison to everything else. Like the compelling arrow death should have been really, really cinematic or gripping. And I know this movie was parsed down to be edited for its R rating, but they either scaled back way too much or it just wasn't there. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this movie. I'm trying to hit a horror movie for each of the holidays this year, but I just Valentine was a miss. I've never seen the original My Bloody Valentine, and maybe that's what I'll watch next year. But for this year, I went with Valentine. Oh, I said I was going to address the spoiler ending, so I'm going to hit the spoilers at the end. The end of this movie, you find out that the girl who committed the mean thing to the young boy in the beginning is actually the killer, and it's not the young boy, he was the red herring and whatnot. But that's never explained as to why that young boy like continues to bleed from the nose, and then every time the killer's about to kill somebody, he starts spontaneously bleeding from the nose, or she. That's never really explained or addressed. But then the final shot of the movie, you realize that the Adam character is actually the J.M. character from the beginning, and David Boreanaz is in fact that boy grown up, or at least that's what the implication is once he starts bleeding from his nose. And it's just... it's A, unclear, B, convoluted, C, were they like a team? Is this a kind of suit of Scream situation? Is it like, what's going on with this ending? It's just, it's daft, honestly. This movie isn't good. I give it, this is probably being really generous, 2 stars, but I really like Marley Shelton. She's awesome, and it's always fun watching her in genuinely any movie, but I was happy to see her in this. Katherine Heigl is pretty solid in her first 10 minutes. Denise Richards is just kind of there, not really giving much of a performance. She's not a bad actress. I've seen her give solid performances. I really liked not Urban Legend, I really liked Wild Things. With Neve Campbell and her and Kevin Bacon, and that movie is just a fun, wild ride, and one of those great guilty pleasures that maybe I'll review someday. So she can bring it, and she was also in the great Starship Troopers, but she's there in this movie, and then, yeah. But then Boreanaz is fine. I did think it was kind of weird that he was playing like this reformed alcoholic kind of character who's trying to better himself. But still trying to fight the temptation to drink. And it's like, so your first big move to not play Angel is to play Angel. Because in Angel, the TV show specifically is very much an allegory for alcoholism, and he's trying to not drink blood in his case, but so much so that he even becomes a champion is the word that they use quite often, and an advocate for others who are trying to reform for themselves. And I just thought it was interesting that his first like non-angel role is essentially Angel again, but whatever. Anyway, I've talked about Valentine far too much, and probably more than you've even thought about this movie's existence in the past 22 years, 21 years, is it? Anyway, wow, this movie's old enough to drink. Jesus. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.